Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap of the week. In this one, we talk about the 50 Super Series rumors. They're getting closer now. Cadence, which is a chip design software company, getting fined over $100 million for violating export control laws, which is going to be relevant pretty soon in some of our coverage. The U.S. government talking about breaking up NVIDIA and then basically immediately saying, just kidding, they're worth lots of money. And then also, Maingear responds to our review of their pre-builds. AMD has a new 9700F CPU coming out that Asus has leaked by accident. And there is a computer case that looks like a Founders Edition GPU. But it's a case. Let's get started. Before that, this video is brought to you by ID Cooling and the frozen A720 cooler. The A720 air cooler performed well in our testing last year. The A720 is a relatively high-end, dual 140mm air cooler with 7 heat pipes. We found the use of larger fans can be beneficial to acoustic performance given the thermals, although you'll want to check your case for compatibility given the taller nature of the cooler and its fans. ID Cooling uses an all-black look for its A720 and includes mounting hardware for all modern sockets. Learn more at the link in the description below. All right, first up, pretty simple. The 50 Super Series rumors are getting increasingly real. It seems like also increasingly close. So there's been rumors of a 5080 Super, 5070 Ti Super, and 5070 Super for a while now. Basically, it's a memory increase on them. And one of the interesting things with the 5080 Super in particular is that back in January when the 5080 and 5090 were announced, MSI had a product announcement video where in the background, we pointed this out at the time, they had a 5080 box that said 24 gigabytes on it, which is not what the 5080 is, it's 16. So that was really interesting to see that at that time where it was like, well, either it's a typo, which is weird, or maybe NVIDIA was going this direction and changed it to 16, or it's a future product. And it's starting to look like, in the very least, it will be a future product as a 5080 Super. So Compite7Kimi, a prominent hardware leaker, has previously tweeted about NVIDIA working on a 5080 Super at 24 gigabytes of GDDR7, coupled with a greater than 400 watt TDP. Tweaktown, more recently, is now saying that it has sources that indicate multiple 50 Super cards are on the horizon and will launch later this year. The GPUs reportedly include the 5070 Super, the 5070 Ti Super, and the aforementioned 5080 Super. The publication claims, quote, "The big takeaway is that there will be a massive 50% increase in VRAM capacity for all 50 Super Series GPUs. Only the RTX 5070 Super is expected to receive a minor increase in CUDA core count," end quote. Tweaktown also added that, quote, "The increased memory will also be accompanied by an increase in power draw, indicating that the Super Series will ship with higher boost clock speeds than their non-Super counterparts," end quote. According to the publication, the 5080 Super will allegedly offer 24 gigabytes of GDDR7 and a 415 watt TGP, which would corroborate Compite7Kimi's claim if true. Interestingly, Tweaktown noted that the 5070 Ti Super would also receive 24 gigabytes of GDDR7 memory. We're not sure if this is a typo. The publication adds that it will be a 350 watt TGP card. And finally, the 5070 Super will supposedly have 18 gigabytes of G7 and a 275 watt TGP. Just some of our own analysis here where covering the Super Series cards over the years, honestly, it really feels like every time NVIDIA launches a Super Series, it's almost like an apology. Like, I mean, not a good one, but it tends to follow really negative reception of GPUs for value and seems to come with it this method of slightly bringing down the price on whatever it is succeeding while maintaining the price points, plus or minus a bit, for the new Super Series cards with some exceptions. Like the 4080 Super, for example, dropped the price of the 4080 significantly. But as we commented at the time, it really felt like an intentional tactic where it was like, okay, we launched the one that freaks people out, $1,200. We bring it down to $1,000. Now everyone's like, okay, it's getting better. This is a step in the right direction. Problem is, it's kind of like the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, except the direction we're going is in the worst way. So I don't know. Super Series always seems, at least to me, to bring with it this sort of like, let's attempt to reset some of the narrative and reception of these products by slightly tweaking the value and, okay, we'll cave a little bit on the memory, and now everyone kind of shuts up for a little while. But we'll see. That's just how it's come across to me since the 20 series. Now, initial speculation stated that NVIDIA would launch this next batch of Super Series GPUs at CES 2026, so that would be early January next year. But Tweaktown says that it'll be a holiday release for 2025. The memory bump would at least address some of those concerns. It's going to come down to pricing. If they bump the memory up, but the pricing also goes up, or even if it maintains in a lot of these situations, then it's not really an improvement. So we'll see when it comes out if all this proves to be true. It sounds like it'll be end of this year. Up next, Cadence is paying a big fine. So Reuters reporting that electronic computer-aided design company Cadence has pleaded guilty to, quote, conspiracy to commit export control violations, end quote, to a Chinese military university. The company will pay the U.S. government $140 million as a result. Now, we'll actually be talking about this and similar topics coming up in a big investigation we have pretty soon. So we spent several weeks in Asia for a story where we were able to gather a lot of exclusive information. It was pretty cool. There's kind of a limit to what I can say right now until we publish our trailers for it, which is coming up. But I guess what I can say is we were able to find several people who not only went on record, but went on camera with us to show us how some of this type of thing happened. So anyway, that'll be an exclusive video coming up from us pretty soon. Reuters elaborated that, quote, Cadence is accused of violating export controls by illegally selling chip design software and hardware to front companies representing China's National University of Defense Technology, end quote. According to the publication, the Justice Department believes that the university is, quote, involved in simulating nuclear explosions, end quote. The U.S. Commerce Department also reportedly says that the university supports, quote, nuclear explosive simulation and military simulation activities, end quote. Despite this debacle, Cadence said it was, quote, pleased, end quote, to reach a settlement with the U.S. government, and the company's stock rose 6.5% following this news and the company's quarterly postings. That's right, we live in a bizarro world where a U.S.-based company selling software to aid in nuclear and military simulations to a company that has export controls on it by the U.S. government is allowed to continue selling software to especially American companies, but Deepcool, using a logistics company in Russia, is not allowed to sell fans to people building gaming computers. I guess it just depends how much money you have for the fines. To be fair, as a result of Cadence pleading guilty, Reuters wrote that the company, quote, is expected to be on probation for 3 years, meaning it cannot commit any further violations and has to fulfill its obligations under the plea agreement, end quote. And if your question is, or what, the answer is probably, or money. That's normally the answer for these huge companies that have an almost monopolistic grip on a particular subsection of an industry. Some of Cadence's customers include companies like NVIDIA and Qualcomm. The company was formerly run by Lip-Bu Tan from 2009 up until December 2021. If that name sounds familiar, Tan now serves as CEO for Intel. And in case you're wondering, we checked, yes, Tan was the CEO of Cadence when it was illegally selling software, and he also served as Cadence's executive chairman up until May of 2023. But as always, these huge companies set the great example that if the fine is lower than what you can make from the crime and no one goes to prison, then it's always worth doing the crime as a big corporation. Next up, and the last one for this week in the blend of what's happening in the political world mixed with technology. At a Washington AI summit, US President Trump mentioned breaking up NVIDIA despite admitting not knowing what it does, which currently is the most valuable company by market cap in the world. This obviously would be a huge deal, whether it's a joke or not. Even mentioning it is important, kind of reminds people that this is a thing that could theoretically happen if the right conditions were in place. And so we're covering that news here. Here's a 1-minute clip, including the direct quote.
And a very special thanks to some of the top industry leaders here, including somebody that's amazing. I said, look, we'll break this guy up. This is before I learned the facts of life. I said, we'll break him up. They said, don't say, it's very hard. I said, why? I said, what percentages of the market does he have? Sir, he has 100%. I said, who the hell is he? What's his name? His name is Jensen Huang, NVIDIA. I said, what the hell is NVIDIA? I've never heard of it before. He said, you don't want to know about it, sir. I figured we could go in and we could sort of break him up a little bit, get him a little competition. And I found out it's not easy in that business. I said, supposing we put the greatest minds together and they work hand in hand for a couple of years. He said, no, it would take at least 10 years to catch him if he ran NVIDIA totally incompetently from now on. So I said, all right, let's go on to the next one. And then I got to know Jensen, and now I see why. Jensen, will you stand up? What a job.
First of all, because Jensen Huang likes elephants so much, we have to start by addressing the elephant in the room.
NVIDIA
Next thing you know, we're going to have politicians talking about NVIDIA's next GPUs on stage.
3080 Ti.
More importantly, and as context, Jensen Huang's recent attendance to a $1 million per head dinner with Trump highlights that NVIDIA is taking its relationship with US politicians and the US government seriously. Based on the recent comments, it seems like the relationship has smoothed over, but even a joke about breaking NVIDIA up is enough to remind people that technically it's possible if breaching antitrust regulations and holding a monopoly in a way that's anti-competitive. And so not only does NVIDIA have most of the AI market, they also have 93% of just the gaming GPUs market, the add-in board market, more technically, which could be production as well. And that's from recent numbers from JPR. So NVIDIA is huge. It does, in fact, have most of the markets that it's in. And I guess it's really just, I don't know, it's a question of who can compete as well. Like, AMD's really got to step it up because AMD's been kind of slacking the last couple of years in terms of like really trying to fiercely compete. But anyway, we've talked about that story. Up next, we have two Maingear stories this week. We've combined them. One is a simple retro-themed PC that the company's launching. The other one is Maingear has responded to our review of their pre-built from a couple weeks back. So starting with the shortest one, Maingear has released a limited edition PC that the company is calling the Retro 95. Maingear says it's a tribute to 90s era horizontal desktops with its beige case, which is the Silverstone FLP01. The system starts at $1,600 but can be equipped with up to a 9800X3D, RTX 5080, 96 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, 8 terabytes of NVMe storage, Noctua fans, and an 850 watt power supply if you'd prefer to spend multiples of that $1,600 amount and end up in the high thousands. As for Maingear's response to us, so we reviewed their Shroud pre-built PC, which we spent around $6,000 on. I don't know, but maybe about a month ago now. The review had some good positives. We pointed out Maingear's willingness to take risks and participate in things that are more sort of actual enthusiast. It also had a lot of negatives, though, that came about as a result of that. Those included unstable memory overclocking that led to memory errors when running tests. It also had crashes. It had boiling VRAM on the GPU due to poorly configured fans. It had a bad liquid metal application that just didn't make any sense. It was on the IHS as well, even less sensible. It had display functionality issues and other issues in general. Maingear sent us a lengthy response to our review. We'll show that on the screen now. Maingear stated the following changes, quote, replacement of liquid metal for premium TIM for largely the same reasons you covered in your video. They said they were already working on this, apparently. Shipping has been upgraded, they say, to palletized freight. That's actually a good move. If it costs $6,000, then doing that will really help reduce the chance of damage. It makes it a little more complicated to receive, but with the lift gate, it should be fine. Improved internal LCD reliability, they say. They say, quote, in addition to the USB-C connection, we've added an HDMI connection running from the integrated graphics to the motherboard. This has alleviated the no video at startup issue, which we suspect was a bug with DP alt mode over USB-C not initializing properly. We're working with customers on the fix and have a guide with steps available on our website. This cable was included in the accessory bag with every Mark I order, so the fix is simple for impacted customers. They also said, quote, improved memory stability. We relaxed the timings on the memory overclock, resulting in increased stability with minimal impacts to performance, end quote on that. And I'll just jump in and say, if the increase in stability is not to 100%, then it's not good enough. They didn't specify if it's to 100%, we would certainly assume so, or hope so at least. Maingear also said, quote, changes we've made since the release of your review, calling out Haven in the product specs, more clarity around trade-in emails. They say you have to be opted in to marketing to receive them, and they've made this clearer. They also said, quote, clearer verbiage in our quick start guide, which helps to specify the monitor connection situation. And Maingear also says it is making some changes coming up, including a recommendation of clean input power. That wasn't one of our complaints, but it's not a bad thing to recommend. A lot of people don't have a ton of control over that, but you could do a UPS or something. And they also said they're working on optimization of fan curves and better airflow layouts, and that was one of our complaints, so that's good to see. These are good responses in general. We agree with most of the steps being taken here, and we look forward to reevaluating Maingear in the future once they've implemented some of these changes. Up next, Lian has unveiled again its O11D Mini V2. We saw it at Computex. Now it's actually out. The company says that the case is 2 liters larger in volume than its predecessor, but it now supports ATX power supplies in addition to ATX motherboards. while being as small as they could figure it out. Lian says the case supports radiators up to 360 millimeters and is compatible with back connect motherboards. The company also advertises a 10-degree slanted bottom, which the company says is supposed to help cool the GPU. The O11D Mini V2 supports standard and vertical video card mounting and includes adjustable support brackets. Lian also notes the case provides a repositionable I/O module, and in terms of fan support, Lian says that the O11D Mini V2 supports, quote, up to 3 120mm fans at the bottom, 2 120 on the side, 1 120 at the rear, and up to 3 120 or 2 140 at the top, end quote. The Flow variant of the case comes with 5 120mm reverse blade fans. The case is available now and starts at $90 for the base model, or $100 for the Flow version with the included fans. We have one. We intend to review it. We're not sure the timeline yet. A lot of stuff going on right now for our content, but we do plan on reviewing it. Up next, rumors of AMD's Ryzen 7 9700F appear to be true, as Asus has let the cat out of the bag. Not sure who put the cat in the bag to begin with. The cat probably went in the bag on its own, is what they do. But on Asus's support website, and we were just as surprised as you are to learn that they have one, users can search for a Ryzen 7 9700F and see that it is supposedly a 65-watt, 8-core CPU with a reported clock of 3.8 gigahertz, which we assume is the base clock here. It also has 32 megabytes of reported L3 cache, like the 9700X before it, and this was spotted by Italian website bitsandchips.it. But just like with Intel, the F SKUs are the ones that don't have integrated graphics. So the F at the end means no IGP, or the IGP is inactive. There's no word on when the CPU might launch or what it'll cost. The 9700X tends to be around $300 right now, or a little over, so it should be below that. Up next, following up on our recent report about how NVIDIA's N1X chip was spotted on Geekbench, the N1X, which goes by the catchy codename JMJWOA, and sounds like a gigabyte motherboard SKU, was once again spotted. This time, it's within FurMark's database. While FurMark is predominantly known as a stress test, it can also act as a benchmark. Here, the N1X was running NVIDIA driver R590.22 and had the resolution at 1280 by 720 with a 71 FPS. The chip garnered a 4286 score, which isn't particularly impressive. This is likely the result of a chip being a work in progress, however, especially when you factor in that the reported GPU 0 max usage was just 63% and GPU 0 max temperature was 59 degrees Celsius. This is assuming that any of these metrics are accurate. They might not be, and when it's potentially a totally different architecture than has ever been used before, we're not sure yet, then it's likely that at least something is incorrect. Now, NVIDIA's N1X is the collaboration with MediaTek, so it's going to be an ARM-based solution. That was originally rumored for sometime this year, and that has been pushed back to sometime next year. At least the rumors have rumored that the rumors have been pushed back. Golden Field is up next. So AliExpress gold mine Golden Field, which is a computer hardware manufacturer that mostly sells to the China market, has launched a computer case line that looks like a Founders Edition GPU. That's right, we heard you like Founders Edition, so we put a Founders Edition in your Founders Edition so you can Founders Edition while you Founders Edition. The company's cases come in two sizes. The smaller Nano model measures 378 by 220 by 459 millimeters. The larger Light variant measures 471 by 220 by 459 millimeters. So one dimension changes there. In terms of cooling, the Light supports radiators up to 360 millimeters at the top. The Nano supports up to 240. Both cases support ATX motherboards. The cases have an FE style front, which looks like a plastic front panel with slats for ventilation, and the FE style cover caps at the center. The cases are cheap. The Light version of the case will retail for about $30 US, converted from RMB, and the Nano version will retail for roughly $25 US. The cases are only available in China at the moment, although you could probably get it shipped here if you're able to navigate the sites. Up next, Windows 10 is turning 10. Not to be confused with Turn 10, the game studio that Microsoft also owns. Turn 10 is turning 25. Windows 10 initially launched on July 29th, 2015, and it followed Windows 8, which would actually make Windows 10 Windows 9, but Windows 10.9 followed Windows 8.1, so maybe it's more like Windows 8.2. Either way, Windows 10 was largely praised for sucking a lot less than its predecessor. For Windows 10's 10-year anniversary, Microsoft is abandoning it. The operating system has its end of life set for October 14th, 2025. At this time, the OS will stop receiving updates. Worse, Windows 11's hardware requirements are steeper, meaning that millions of devices that probably could support Windows 11 without issue will simply not be able to install it, at least not without some kind of tweaking or general technical know-how. Up next, in a blog post detailing NVIDIA's reaction to this and its latest game-ready driver, the company revealed that it will soon be ending game-ready drivers for Maxwell GPUs and Pascal GPUs. Pascal would be the venerable and famed 10 series, including the 1080 Ti. Maxwell would be the predecessor. That's like the 980 Ti and the 900 series, most of them. The post reads, quote, after a final game-ready driver release in October 2025, GeForce GPUs based on Maxwell, Pascal, and Volta architectures will transition to receiving quarterly security updates for the next 3 years, through October 2028, end quote. NVIDIA added, quote, also, we're extending Windows 10 game-ready driver support for all GeForce RTX GPUs to October 2026, a year beyond the operating system's end of life, to ensure users continue to receive the latest day zero optimizations for new games and apps, end quote. Now that was for all of them. So that means even the 50 series will stop receiving Windows 10 driver updates and optimizations, specifically October 2026. So getting forced onto Windows 11 one way or the other, it looks like, or to Linux or something, which we've been talking about lately. The fact that Windows 10 and Maxwell and Pascal cards alike are all still newsworthy and still things people are using represent that NVIDIA and Microsoft at least used to make things that really had some serious longevity here and were much more respected products. I mean, Windows 10 and the 1080 Ti, as an example alike, are both generally respected, at least compared to their successors, especially Windows 10 versus 11. So anyway, that's the news for this week. Thanks for watching. We have a ton of stuff coming up, including, again, our big story. We are on a time, you'll hear about that in the next few days when we start talking about what the story is actually covering. It is really cool. I'm super excited to share it and can't wait for you all to see it. That's it, though, for news. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersaccess.net to grab a shirt like this one or one of our mod mats or coaster packs, and we'll see you all next time.